Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is Knights of Pen and Paper 2. It is $9.99, it is a turn-based RPG developed by Kai Games. They were the ones responsible for the Knights of Pen and Paper The Haunted Fall DLC. This is a turn-based RPG that is set up in a tabletop-like manner. You would get together with your friends, pretend to be roles, and this is supposed to sort of simulate that in a very simplistic RPG setting. Now, it is published by Paradox Interactive. They're known for Pillars of Eternity, City Skylines, but they're more of a multi-developed publisher. But let's get right into the game, shall we? Alright, so these are the 5 adventurers that I have assembled for this run. So we got a rocker dwarf warrior. Now each character that you choose, and you get to choose who you bring to the table, has a classification in terms of a real life classification, aka the rocker here. We got the dwarf, which is a specific class. It's dwarf, elf, or human. And then of course the class itself, the warrior. Each of them bring their own special, unique aspect to it. So for example, dwarves have fortitude passive, which gives them damage resistance at this point. Now, each of them have their own skills based on their warrior stat or paladin, or, for example, the rich kid, he earns a little bit more money from encounters because of his rich kid status. He gets a little bit more of an allowance. I also like the goth elf hunter because that just seems right, and a lab rat human because, of course, it's a lab rat human. Now, the way you can construct it is you can construct your team in various ways. You start with 2, you can recruit more, and then you can unlock quests and classes as you go along. So it's not the original class set like mage, wizard, and things like that. The warlock in the middle is an interesting one because of the way that she can sort of controls the field in some ways. Now, of course, you're going on quests, and you do have the dice mechanics as you see there. But basically the idea is that you go around, finish quests, and try to get further and further into this world. The storyline is actually rather interesting because it blends the real-life portion of this game into the tabletop portion. So it's the first edition, second edition kind of situation you would see in Dungeons and Dragons. It's almost like they're arguing against each other, and you're actually facing a second edition wizard in question. Who's basically changing the field in question, so you have to defeat him at this point. It does a very good job with situational humor as well as just working off of the humor that's available, as you'll see in this available quest that I'm going along. It looks like something you could draw. Yeah, that's mine. Usually look like tragic farming accidents, unfortunately. But this quest has me setting up a router at this point, which is, again, a different take on things, but I think the game's charm and humor in the way that they go about it really sells the game in terms of just wanting to see what sort of silliness happens next. And next, the landline, I'm sorry, not a router, but we're installing a landline for the knights in question. So we need to protect it, and our party's being attacked, and we get into combat. Now, combat is pretty situational. First of all, you see here that a snowstorm is going, so it's going to inflict weakness on a couple of my characters. That's going to bring down their attack stats. The numbers that you see there are the initiative. So my guy goes first, and then it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then, switch out. Now, this does change things a little bit because now you know who to go after and who to sort of stun at the right times. A lot of this game has to deal with using your skill sets. For example here, I can use a pommel strike or I can use a power lunge to get to the back row. Melee characters can only go into the first rows, but archers and mages can usually do other abilities in terms of those back rows. Using fireballs to hit everyone around you, inflicting burns and statuses. Now, unlike other RPGs of this type, your statuses are acting a little bit differently here. So for example, if you're burning, when it comes your turn, you will actually roll to see if that burn goes away based on the 3 major stats: the body, the mind, and then I forget what the green one is off the top of my head. I think it's something to do with skills or senses. I believe it's senses. But basically, each status has a associated role with it, and so you could, get rid of that burn. You could get rid of that weakness just by a roll. Obviously, certain characters and certain classes do better in that. In terms of, okay, my warlock, for example, very good with senses in the mind, but when it comes to her body, no, she's not going to do very well at that point. And so it's very easy to take her down with, body-based or physical attacks. Now, that adds a whole layer of complication to the combat. The fact is that, you don't necessarily know what their stats are going to be, but you also know what can work and what can be effective after you've, experimented a little bit. And I feel like experimentation does very, very well in this game. I actually have really enjoyed, even after my first 4.5 hours, really every combat situation that I've been in at this point. Now, you have your major quests, which obviously have pre-planned, mobs like this, but when you get into some of the other combat, like, when you're doing side quests, like, I gotta kill 7 archers, for example. The idea there is that you can actually choose how many archers you face at once, and that does add an incentive to try different types of combat and try to push yourself to the limit, because the more archers you take on at one time, the better that you're going to do in terms of experience that you're getting as well as gold. Now, the class variation is also good. I mean, again, for example, you see the Warlock there's got a little dragon in there. The Warlock's a very different class. It is a class that curses in terms of, causing status effects, or you can actually bring back other people by draining the life out of your opponents and, funneling it to your guys. And then the dragon there will stay and melee attack people until the Warlock takes damage. Now you think, okay, it's easy for them to take out. The bigger concept in this game is an idea called threat. So each character has a set of threat, and the bigger threat that you've got as a hero, the more likely you're going to get hit. And so my dwarf all the way on the left-hand side there has got the most threat when I start the battle. So he's going to get the most damage, and he's my tank at this point. Very similar to MMORPGs in terms of World of Warcraft. You got your tank class that's trying to, take all the damage at this point. But if your archer does too much damage, then all of a sudden the shift is going to be onto her at that point. And so you got to change up your style. Maybe use a skill that will bring more threat to it. It's done very well in a simplistic form, and there's complication, but it's complication for variety's sake, and I feel it does a very good job at doing that. I see a new landline, finally it arrived, they install it, and I get an item and everything along that line. The combat here is good. The basic combat here is good, and in particular with the combination of skills and threat, I feel like it keeps it, up and going more than other RPGs. Now, a lot of RPGs definitely usually have some problems in terms of, grinding. I never really felt it like on this one. I mean, you could grind as much as you want, but I never felt like I needed to. And to be honest, the combat's probably a little bit easier than I would want, but it's also a more simplistic game, and I also made sure I did every side quest. I did try to run through in terms of, okay, avoid the side quests, go for the main quests at this point, and I did start running into more problems. So, we're having a little bit of humor there, as you saw there, with the Paper Knight deciding to overcharge us for the landline in question because we went over our data limit. Now, I will say that I would like to see more variety in terms of, like, enemies within the main quest, like combinations. You do get some, but not as much as I would want. But, it does the job. Alright, so we're at the end of combat here. Again, the only reason I wanted to show you the end of combat is a little bit of the health restorations and the experience boosts that you get at this point. So, now, beyond combat, you have other things you can do. You can investigate a segment of the map in question to find more treasure. Okay, that's cool. It brings up an issue I have with the game regarding slowness. Like, for example, I'm rolling here, but I have to wait for every roll animation to go through. After the first, 20 times, it gets really annoying, and I can't make it go faster, and I just want it to go through. I want to see the numbers right away. Don't make me wait on this. I wish there was an option to turn that off more than anything else. And the UI and that implementation does show some problems. Now, this game may be an idea for a mobile port. I haven't really confirmed that yet. But it's got a simplistic, fighting style and things like that. But the thing is that even with that said, it feels like the UI is a little bit clunky at times. Like, for example, if I'm buying items for my guys, I'm buying bread, I can't buy multiple at a time. I gotta buy one at a time. That's really annoying. When I'm using skills, for example, when I'm I'm leveling up my skills. I actually have to highlight over the one that I want and then not touch anything else and then, upgrade that skill, as opposed to clicking on it, then upgrading. It's clunky. It feels like it was really unnecessary the way it was implemented. Gonna fast forward a little bit to the dungeons in question. Now, you got your main storyline. Your main storyline, has your main quests in the overworld that stay relatively the same. But then you've got the dungeons, and the dungeons are procedurally generated. You will get a little bit of randomization in it in terms of a little bit of variety. You could have traps fall on you, and you actually have to do saving rolls in order to avoid those traps. You do have, things that can happen in a dungeon. You can find people and get more experience, or, you can find a treasure and roll to see if you can open it. It does add to the game, and there was enough variety there, although I've only faced about 3 dungeons at this point, and I'm about 4 hours in, so that is a little bit rarer than I would want it to be. But again, it was scattered up enough, and I had to go back to it enough for some quests that it did the job. It also helps that the aesthetic changes with each dungeon. I was in the Fallout vault at the first one, and again, there's a lot of references to other games in this and a lot of other popular media. Toxic Avenger shows up, Fallout shows up, as you see here, ASCII shows up, Mario shows up. It's a very good sense of humor, as I mentioned before, but I really feel like they understood where to hold back on it too, and not just, present what would be the obvious joke every single time. Now, as I mentioned, there's about 4.5 hours of gameplay that I've played at this point, and I've been enjoying it pretty much the entire time. And what was great about it was the fact that it was in 2 or 3 sessions that I did about an hour each, and 2 hours in one case. And I do that for a reason. I want to make sure a game can be played in a long sit-down period and then shorter sit-down periods. So I do try to do a 2 or 3 hour period, as well as 1 hour, take a break, 1 hour. The game still was fun in those short bursts, but was also funner in the long burst. Now, granted, it is no, Tales game. It is no, complicated RPG. It's no Chroma Squad or anything like that. It's very simplistic, even though it has a lot of, elements under the surface at this point. But I feel like, it did the job in terms of a casual experience. It did a job in terms of me wanting to see what happens next, wanting to see the next joke in question, wanting to see what kind of dungeon stuff that I get into. Really, in the end, it was just an enjoyable experience. What the game captured was that sort of tabletop, getting your friends together experience in a lighthearted way, but still providing a challenge and providing some replayability with the classes. As you go along, you can unlock new things. You can unlock even a new table that will help you out in your combat situations, or, if you shield, you will get more energy or health at that point. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you got an idea of the Knights of Pen and Paper 2 and what it has to offer. Again, I'm always willing to answer questions. If I didn't answer any questions in terms of the video in the comments section below, I will always leave a Steam review in the comments, or in the description below as well. It does help if you vote that up so that people can see this and maybe, see the channel for help me to grow, so on and so forth. Liking and sharing also helps the channel, and expect more content soon, guys. I probably will have a preview of what's to come Monday, as well as some of my own thoughts of what's going on in the YouTube world in my own life on Monday. I do want to sort of bring it to a personal level. So, I will see you all later, and have a good night. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you like this content and want to see more of it, you may want to hit that subscribe button on the left-hand side. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, take a look at this video on the left-hand side as well. And if you missed my last video, take a look at the right-hand side. Once again, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.